All right, let's kick off another deep dive. Today we're going deep on the TON blockchain.
Mhm.
It's this platform, right? Aims to create a totally decentralized internet.
Yeah.
Super fast, crazy scalable.
Yeah, massively.
And we've got a ton.
Pun intended.
Yeah, maybe. But we've got all this stuff to go through, articles, documents, you name it, to really give us the full picture of TON from its, beginnings to where it's at now and where it might be going.
Definitely. I think by the end of this, you'll not only get how TON works, but you'll see it's had, well, a pretty wild ride to get here.
And who knows, maybe some listeners will even want to jump in and get involved themselves after this.
For sure. For sure.
So, one of the things that jumps out at me right away is that TON, it's not just another blockchain, is it?
No, not really. It's more like, think of it as like a whole new internet, like the foundation for one.
Whoa, okay, so break that down for me. I mean, we see TON blockchain, right? That's at the core. But then there's all these other parts, TON DNS, TON storage, TON sites. What's the big picture here?
So imagine, right? You don't need Google. You don't need Amazon for all those basic things we use the internet for.
Like all this stuff we take for granted.
Exactly. So with TON, things like your domain name, storing files, even websites themselves, they all live on this decentralized network.
Meaning no one company, no one person is calling the shots.
Right. And that could make things like censorship or those big data breaches we hear about all the time much harder to pull off.
Okay, so this is way bigger than just making transactions faster. This is a whole different internet experience.
You got it.
That's ambitious to say the least.
Ambitious is putting it mildly.
And speaking of ambitious, they're aiming for millions of transactions per second.
Yeah, millions.
I mean, how does that even compare to what we have now? It's got to be light years ahead.
Oh, it's a massive leap. Think about Visa, right? They're considered pretty good. Handle tens of thousands of transactions per second. TON's goal is to support, ultimately, hundreds of millions of users. So yeah, it's a whole other level.
It's like comparing, I don't know, a horse and buggy to a spaceship.
Something like that.
Now, I'm already thinking, okay, for people who know, let's say, Ethereum, how does this stack up? I mean, they both use smart contracts, both aim for decentralization, but are they really that different?
There are some overlaps for sure, but TON has some pretty unique tricks up its sleeve.
Like what?
So you've got Ethereum with synchronous smart contracts. Basically, everything has to happen in a specific order, one step at a time.
Okay, I kind of get that.
But TON, they use asynchronous contracts,
Yeah.
so lots of things can happen at the same time, concurrently.
So more efficient.
Way more. Think of it like a single-lane road versus a huge multi-lane highway. TON can just handle things much faster.
So if you're a developer, that means you can build faster, more complex apps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to make it even better, they came up with their own programming language, FunC.
FunC.
Yep, specifically designed for this whole asynchronous environment. So yeah, tons of flexibility to create some really unique decentralized apps.
This is getting pretty technical, but before we, dive too deep into the weeds, I think it's worth understanding TON's story, right? It's actually got a pretty dramatic beginning.
Yeah, it really does. It all starts back in 2018 with a team behind Telegram.
The messaging app.
That's the one.
Yeah.
They already had, hundreds of millions of users?
Mm-hmm.
So they were no strangers to the challenges of scaling things up.
Right.
And they started, looking into blockchain solutions.
So I'm guessing they were thinking about scaling issues right from the start, but why create their own blockchain? Why not just use one that was already out there?
That's the thing. None of the existing platforms really fit what they needed. They wanted something that could not only handle Telegram's massive user base, but also potentially support, a ton of different decentralized services.
So they went for it, built their own Telegram Open Network, TON.
Exactly.
And this wasn't some small side project, right?
Yeah.
They raised $1.7 billion in a private sale of TRN tokens, which were called grams back then.
Yeah, it was a huge deal. One of the largest crypto offerings ever.
Mm-hmm.
Attracted some major investors, too, from all over the world.
Talk about commitment.
For sure. But this is where the story takes a bit of a turn.
Uh-oh. Here comes the drama.
The SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, they stepped in, filed a lawsuit against Telegram.
Saying what?
Basically, they claimed that the sale of grams, it wasn't legit,
Yep.
that it was an unregistered securities offering.
Ah, the SEC. Always keeping things interesting.
Well, I mean, they have an important job, right? Regulating the markets, protecting investors.
Sure.
But in this case, it brought TON's development to a screeching halt.
So what happened? Did Telegram just give up?
They fought it for a while,
Hmm.
argued that grams were utility tokens, not securities.
Mm.
But in the end, in 2020, they decided to withdraw from the project.
Wow. So that was it. End of story.
You think so, right? But it's not.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting.
Mm.
Even though Telegram pulled out, there was this passionate community of developers, open source folks, who refused to let TON die.
Really? They just, like, kept it going.
They did. This group, they called themselves Newton, they basically picked up where Telegram left off, used all the original documentation as their guide.
So instead of fading away, TON was, what, resurrected by the people who believed in it. That's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And that spirit, that community-driven approach, it's at the heart of TON today.
I like that.
Now, there's the TON Foundation, a nonprofit. They help support the network. But the real driving force is still the community.
Now, here's what I find really interesting. TON, it didn't launch with the typical, ICO or IEO like so many other crypto projects.
Yep.
Instead, they did this whole different thing with their cryptocurrency, Toncoin. They distribute it entirely through mining.
Right. They use this unique method, initial proof of work, IPPoW.
IPIW. Okay, break that down for me because I'm not familiar with that.
So imagine like all the Bitcoin in existence. It was all mined right at the beginning.
Mm.
And everyone had an equal shot at getting some.
Wow.
That's basically what TON did with Toncoin.
So no pre-mine, no special treatment for, early investors. Everyone was on a level playing field.
Exactly.
That's pretty radical compared to, the usual way of doing things. But what was the idea behind this approach?
Fairness, basically. They wanted to ensure that Toncoin was distributed in a decentralized way right from the start.
Okay, I see.
It was kind of like mirroring Bitcoin's early days,
Right.
where, anyone with a computer could mine. It created this strong sense of community ownership.
I can see how that would make people, really dedicated, really invested in seeing the network succeed.
Sure.
But once all the Toncoin was mined, how did they keep the blockchain secure?
That's where we shift gears, from proof of work to proof of stake. So instead of relying on miners with, tons of computing power, they use validators. And these validators, they stake their Toncoin to participate.
So instead of solving math problems, you need to lock up a certain amount of Toncoin.
Exactly. And the more Toncoin they stake, the better their chances of getting chosen to validate transactions and add new blocks to the chain.
So it's like you're incentivized to hold Toncoin, to actively participate in keeping the network safe.
Right. And just like miners get rewarded in a proof of work system, validators also get rewards for their efforts. They earn newly minted Toncoin.
So it's kind of like earning interest, but instead of a bank, it's the network itself that's paying you.
That's a good way to put it.
But, we have to talk about the bad guys, right? What's stopping someone from trying to game the system, validate fake transactions, that kind of thing?
Well, TON has something called slashing. It's a mechanism that basically, if a validator tries to cheat or do something shady, they risk losing some of their staked Toncoin.
So real consequences.
Yeah, big time. So the powerful incentive to stay honest and keep the network running smoothly.
Makes sense. But how do you catch these bad actors in the first place? I mean, it's a decentralized system, so who's watching the watchers?
And this is where TON's commitment to decentralization really shines. Anyone on the network can actually file a complaint against a validator they think is misbehaving.
Really?
Yeah, but they need proof, of course.
Yeah.
Cryptographic proof. And then other validators, they check it out, verify the complaint, and then they vote on whether to penalize the accused validator.
So it's like a jury of their peers. That's a pretty clever way to ensure accountability without having, some central authority figure.
It is, isn't it? And it all comes back to that core principle of decentralization.
It really does. From how they initially distributed Toncoin to how they maintain security, it's woven into every aspect of TON. But what does decentralization really mean, and why should our listeners care?
Now, that is a great question, and it's one we'll definitely be exploring in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Definitely. We'll unpack the concept of decentralization and really look at what it means for the future of the internet. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a short break. Okay, so we're back, and we were just getting into this whole idea of decentralization.
Right, right.
It's one of those buzzwords you hear all the time, especially in tech. But what does it actually, what does it actually mean when we're talking about something like TON? And why should anyone care?
It's really about shifting power
Yeah.
away from these big centralized players, the big tech companies, and spreading it out, distributing it among, well, a whole network of users.
So less reliance on the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world.
Exactly. Think about like how much we depend on them for everything.
Yeah.
Searching, social media, shopping online, you name it.
It's true, we kind of take it for granted.
And they have all the control, right? They're sitting on mountains of data. They basically get to decide how we experience the digital world. They're the gatekeepers.
So decentralization is about what? Breaking free from those gatekeepers.
Yeah, in a way, giving users more control over their data, over their online experience.
But can something like TON, can any blockchain really compete with these giants?
Well, it's a tall order. I mean, let's be real. Those companies have a huge head start. Billions of users, tons of resources. They're deeply entrenched.
We are.
But, the internet itself was once this tiny little thing. Nobody thought it would amount to much. Disruption, it often comes from unexpected places. And TON, it has some serious advantages that they could shake things up.
Like the scalability we talked about.
Right.
Millions of transactions per second. That's a game changer.
Huge game changer. Right now, you look at Ethereum, they're struggling with scalability. High transaction fees, slow processing times. It's a problem.
It is.
But TON, it's designed to handle that, which makes it a lot more attractive to developers, especially if they want to build applications that need speed, that need efficiency.
Yeah. Okay, but speed isn't everything, right? You need a whole ecosystem. You need developers building cool stuff. You need users actually using it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where TON's, that strong community focus really comes in. They've done a good job of fostering this network of developers, entrepreneurs, all building on TON. They've got all sorts of tools and resources available. Like there's the TON blockchain course, TON bounties. They're actively encouraging people to get involved.
So it's like they're planting seeds, hoping it'll grow into something much bigger.
Exactly, exactly.
But here's the big question, right? Will people actually use it? Will they switch from the platforms they're already comfortable with? I mean, convenience is a powerful thing.
It is. User behavior is tricky to predict.
Yeah.
But things change so fast in tech. A few years ago, who would have thought TikTok would be like the biggest thing?
That's true. Things can change overnight.
What seems niche today, it can be mainstream tomorrow. So yeah, TON faces an uphill battle, but it's not impossible, especially if they can create applications that, easy to use and offer something genuinely better than what we have now.
Yeah, provide a real alternative.
Right. And if TON pulls it off, if they achieve that vision, it could fundamentally change the internet. Power dynamics could shift. Users would have more control, more say in their online experiences. It's pretty exciting to think about.
It is. But let's step back from the future for a second and talk about, how TON actually works right now. We mentioned mining, we mentioned validators. Let's dig into those mechanics a bit.
Yeah, good idea. Those are key to understanding how this decentralized network really functions.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with TON. We've talked about its big vision, how it started with Telegram. But let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this whole system actually tick? We were talking about Toncoin, how it was mined in that unique way, the initial proof of work thing.
Oh, right.
But then how does that translate into, keeping the blockchain running smoothly and securely?
So that's where we transition, right, from proof of work to proof of stake. Once all the Toncoin was out there, mined, then it became the validator's job to secure the network, to validate all the transactions.
And these validators, they're the ones who are, staking their Toncoin to participate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of needing like massive computing power like in Bitcoin with all those miners solving crazy math problems, you just need to have a certain amount of Toncoin and you lock it up.
So the more Toncoin you put in, the better your chances of getting picked to validate transactions and add those new blocks to the chain.
That's it. It's a system that encourages people to hold on to their Toncoin, to really participate in keeping everything secure.
And they get rewarded for doing that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Validators earn newly minted Toncoin for their efforts. It's almost like, earning interest on your Toncoin, but instead of a bank, it's the network itself that's paying you.
Interesting. Okay, but what about, people trying to cheat the system? What stops someone from, I don't know, validating bad transactions or just messing things up?
Well, TON has this built-in mechanism they call it slashing. So basically, if a validator tries to pull a fast one, act dishonestly, they could end up losing a chunk of their staked Toncoin.
So there's a real risk involved.
Yeah, there are consequences, and it keeps everyone honest, helps maintain the integrity of the whole network.
Makes sense. But how do you actually catch these bad actors in a decentralized system? I mean, who's keeping an eye on things?
Well, that's one of the things that makes TON so cool, so decentralized. Anyone participating in the network, anyone can actually file a complaint against a validator they suspect is acting up.
So it's kind of like a self-policing system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But they can't just accuse anyone, right? They need to provide solid proof, cryptographic proof that something's wrong. Then other validators, they verify the complaint, look at the evidence, and they all vote on whether to penalize that validator.
So it's like a jury of their peers making the decision.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that idea of decentralization, taking power away from, a single central authority.
Yeah, yeah. It's really fascinating how that idea, that concept just runs through every part of TON, from how they first got Toncoin out there to how they keep the whole network secure.
It's fundamental to their whole approach.
It is. Well, we've talked about TON's past, we've gone into the tech, even, thought about what it all might mean for the future, but as we're wrapping up this deep dive, I keep coming back to that question you brought up earlier.
You mean about what happens if TON actually achieves all its goals? What happens if they really do create this truly scalable, decentralized internet?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. What could that mean for, well, for everything? How we interact online, how we share information, even how we do business. Would it shake things up with the big tech companies we're all so used to?
Well, who knows what the future holds?
Right.
But the potential is certainly there. If TON really delivers, it could unleash a wave of innovation. We might see totally new applications, new services, all focused on empowering users in ways we haven't even imagined.
Yeah. It could really change how we think about the internet. Instead of these walled gardens, these centralized platforms, it might become more open, more fair, more in the hands of the users.
Yeah, it's an exciting possibility to think about.
It is. And to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring. Check out the resources we've mentioned, engage with the TON community, and form your own opinions. The future of the internet is being shaped right now, and you can be a part of it.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive on the TON blockchain. We hope you found it insightful, and maybe, just maybe, it sparked a little something in you. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring.